Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is the World Conference Against Racism, and we're fortunate to have with us to talk about the recent race conference against racism held in Durban, South Africa, Dr. CPoe. And of course, Dr. Poe, let me welcome you to the show this morning and to talk about what I consider to be a very, very important topic, and that is the World Conference Against Racism. I'm sure that not many of our audience understand exactly what this conference was all about, and I think that you'll have an opportunity to inform us of that event. But before we get into that, Dr. Poe, let's talk about Dr. CPoe, and to give you an opportunity to talk about some of the things that were important in your life that eventually led you to where we are now.
Well, Dr. Haney, of course, I am a Christian psychiatrist and a minister of the gospel here in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm a former pastor. I served as interim pastor of Spruce Street Baptist Church here in Nashville, and then pastor of First Community Church here in Nashville. Over the last 8 months, I've been coordinating an effort involving numbers of persons, approximately 8 to 10 people, who are interested in forming an institute for the study of racism and health here in Nashville, Tennessee. And so because of that, I decided that it would be good for me to go to Durban, South Africa, and attend the World Conference Against Racism.
Let's talk about this World Conference Against Racism, Dr. Poe. When you talk about the World Conference Against Racism, are you saying that all of the nations, the overwhelming majority of the nations of the world, came together to talk about this issue of racism?
There were many, many nations there. I don't have a specific count, but there were many, many nations there from all over the world. And as you know, the U.S. Initially decided not to come and then did send a watered-down delegation to the conference. Of course, you know, Israel did come for a while, but the U.S. Then subsequently left. But yes, I would say most nations around the world were represented at that conference.
Now, how long did this conference last?
This conference lasted for a total of 2 weeks. The first week was a meeting of the non-governmental organizations. These were groups from various countries throughout the world who were involved in the struggle against racism in one form or the other. Some were fighting the problem of classism, the problem of racism against the Dalits and India. This is 260 million people who used to be referred to as the untouchables. Others were there talking about the issues of poverty in South America. Others were talking about the problems of the Aborigines in Australia. Then we had others talking about the issue of covert racism in Canada. So we had people from all over the world talking about racism in its various manifestations.
But all of them agreed upon the problem of racism. You know, as a psychiatrist, how would you define racism? I mean, within the context of how the World Conference used its definition of that word.
Well, now, my definition is that racism is an expression of self-hate. If I hate myself, then it's almost impossible not to hate you and not to hate other people. But I feel that we're all members of one race, and that is the human race created by God. And so if I hate one person, whether that person is of the same ethnic identity or of a different ethnic identity, then I believe I've got a problem of racism.
And so racism is not necessarily directed toward one group. It's a person who is a